Hey everyone, this is Kenny Coins. I'm with Arun Swaminathan, who is from Coya Therapeutics, and I am excited to have him on. I have talked to so many people already that was already invested in the company, and there's tons of people out there who are looking to invest in the company. And Arun is here, who is the CEO of the company, to really just get down to the nitty gritty of what they're doing for 2025, what they're going to be doing for the next 12 to 18 months. Tell us about himself, his leadership style, and how he's pushing the company forward. And all those things are going to be answered in these interviews and more. But Arun, man, let's get it started. Tell us about Koya. Tell us about yourself.
Yeah, no, thank you, Kenny. Really appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. Let me start by saying who Koya is, and give you a little bit of background of myself as well. Koya, we're a company focused on bringing innovative therapies to treat neurodegenerative diseases. These are diseases like ALS or Lou Gehrig's disease that a lot of people have probably heard about, frontotemporal dementia, and also other neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. Now, I'll get very high level into the science, but when you think about diseases like ALS or FTD, they're devastating diseases. They're diseases where once a patient is diagnosed, they have about 3 to 4 years. That's the average. And in that 3 to 4 years, they decline pretty fast as well. So they're tough diseases. ALS has very few options. People might have heard about Lou Gehrig, the famous New York Yankee, right? After whom the disease is named. He was called the Iron Horse, if I'm right, because he didn't miss a single game for 3,000 plus games. And then he got diagnosed and he never played a single game and he passed away, right? So it's a disease that takes people at their peak and really takes away their life. It's tough on the patients, it's tough on the family members. So at Koya, we're really focused on addressing those types of diseases. Frontotemporal dementia is another of those similar types of diseases that also affects the behavior. Our scientific premise behind Koya is that, and I won't get too deep into the science here, is that neuroinflammation really triggers all these diseases. So how do we fundamentally address neuroinflammation? And we do this by addressing something called the regulatory T cells. T cells are these cells that people have probably heard about that kind of fight the bad guys, right? They fight the invaders that they feel shouldn't be there. And they're helped by these guys called T helper cells, which kind of help them become more efficient. But what the T regulatory cells do, as the name implies, they're kind of the moderators. They actually suppress and tamp down that the T cells don't go crazy and start killing the normal cells and the normal things. And that's exactly what happens in neurodegenerative diseases and autoimmune diseases, is that these regulatory T cells become dysfunctional, so they can't protect normal cells, normal tissues from being attacked. And that's what leads to nerve damage in the case of neurodegenerative diseases, and then to all these neuro diseases that I talked about. So we fundamentally try to address that by using a product. Our lead product is called Coya 302, which is a proprietary low-dose interleukin 2 with a CTLA4. Again, what they do together is that they get the Treg numbers and function up, and the CTLA4 helps keep the Treg function higher and sustainable for longer. Therefore, we are able to work well. And what we have seen to date at Koya is through investigator-initiated trials across multiple diseases, we've seen this play out. So we've seen our mechanism get validated, where patients in ALS stopped progression in a small IIT study. And similarly, in Alzheimer's disease, with one of our components of this drug, we saw that we stopped cognitive progression at a once-a-month dosing, again in an investigator-initiated trial. So this gives us confidence moving forward into bigger studies. But can to answer your question, at a core, what we do is try to bring new therapies to patients suffering from these diseases.
Man, that's actually amazing. ALS and all those diseases that you mentioned, like Alzheimer's, is one of the kind of diseases that has a lot of like researchers, scientists a lot of people like stumped, because those are very tough diseases to deal with. Um, from research standpoint, science standpoint, health standpoint, family standpoint, they're very, very mentally draining for everybody around you, including the person that does have it. It breaks down everybody's life, and you're telling me that you guys have an approach that is different from traditional treatment.
Yes, I think our approach is different. As I said, we get to the crux of what drives neuroinflammation. So by doing that, we're able to, I think, address it more upstream, if I may use that word. And we believe that combinations is the approach here, meaning these diseases are not like, there isn't one thing you can change and cure these diseases. They usually require a multi-pronged approach. You got to like tackle them in multiple different ways. And so our first approach is the combination of the low-dose interleukin 2 with a CTLA4. We're also pursuing low-dose interleukin 2 with GLP-1 agonists, the very popular weight loss drugs, which actually by themselves have protective effects against dementia and Alzheimer's disease. That, in fact, yesterday in Nature, 1 million patients,
GLP-1.
GLP-1,
One,
yes,
yeah,
exactly.
GLP-1. That's big.
Yesterday in Nature, big, that's big. So we're pursuing those. So that's why we're unique, is we are approaching this disease differently at the fundamental level. And we're seeing data that supports it so far. We have seen it's small studies, investigator-initiated trials, but what we've seen has been consistent. Across two diseases, we're seeing the biomarkers move the right way. We're seeing all the blood markers move the right way. And the clinical outcome is playing out as well, which gives us a lot of both scientific confidence that, in a bigger study, the outcomes is likely to be good. So we're pretty excited. Obviously, we have many steps to go before we can get this to patients, but we are laser focused on doing what we can control and what we can do to bring these therapies as fast as possible through the regulatory process. So.
Since you mentioned like your long steps and many steps to go, but in 2025 you had a lot of milestones, several milestones that happened during this and this past coming year.
Yeah.
Definitely with, if correct me if I'm wrong, you guys have a partnership with Dr. Reddy
Reddy.
Laboratories for the ASL that values up to 700 million. Correct if those are wrong numbers. And
That's correct. Yeah.
you guys also have cash reserve of like $39 million. That gives you guys a really really long runway to really get things done. Would you like to elaborate that for everybody asking about those focuses?
So, Kenny, you're right. We have a partnership with Dr. Reddy's. It's a 700 million total deal value, where they become our commercial partner for ALS, only for that one indication in most of the global territories, minus Japan, South America, and Mexico, which we have retained. Uh, what's nice about it is, as you pointed out, it has strengthened our cash position because we got non-dilutive money as part of the deal as upon signing the deal. We have line of sight to additional 8.4 million that is coming our way once we start this ALS phase 2 study, which we anticipate doing in 2025. And it also sets us up to additional milestone payments all the way through commercialization. And once we are commercialized, it also gives us mid-teen royalties and up to another 670 million in sales milestone. So it puts us in a nice place for a small company. Uh, you said we are in a good cash position. We have cash to take us through some of these critical milestones into the second half of 2026. And we have hopefully the ability to get additional non-dilutive money through partnerships as well. So we feel pretty good about where we are. And more importantly, we're now really focused on execution. 2025 is going to be a year of getting this trial started, running, getting the top-line data from our investigator trial in frontotemporal dementia, filing an IND for that so we can get into a bigger study with FTD, advancing our combination GLP-1 program, which we call Coya 303, into the next steps, potentially constantly talking to potential partners as well to see if we can get big pharma partners to join us, join forces with us there as well. So it's an exciting 2025 as well. We're going to have a lot of value creation in 2025.
It seems like you guys have a lot of pillars already standing and standing strong. You as the leader of the company, you know what I mean, how do you feel with all the accomplishments that happen with these partnerships, these $700 million valuation, this $38 million, like $39 million cash flow, and you guys are expanding around the world? You know, where do you feel like these things that you have, would they be able to help you accomplish what you see coming for your company in 2025 for Coya?
Yes, I mean, the nice thing about our partnership is that allows us to move forward with this phase 2B ALS trial in about 120 patients. So we're fully funded to do that. So that's the nice part of it. We're ready to go. We just have to go through some regulatory steps. And once that's completed, second quarter of 2025, we expect to submit the needed information to the FDA and move forward. So we feel good. So we do
That
feel good
second
about,
quarter, before we move
yeah.
forward, that second quarter of submitting to 2025, would that accelerate to commercialization if it's good?
So the study itself is a 6-month endpoint with an extension period of another 6 months. 6 months is the endpoint is a score called ALSFRS, is generally accepted by the FDA, and we have met with the FDA as part of our pre-IND processes and have reasonable alignment on the path forward with these clinical trials as well. Is yes, we could complete the trial and have top line as early as sometime in 2026, and then we will file a BLA soon after, assuming that the top line data supports it. Of course, it all depends on the data, which we feel pretty good about the outcomes, but you got to wait to see the data. And then there is a path for potentially commercialization soon after that, so in the 2027 timeframe. But a lot of things have to go right for that to happen. So we'll have better clarity on those in the upcoming year once we start the trial. But yeah, it's the path for ALS. There's some regulatory flexibility. The path is much shorter, typically, assuming the data supports it, than for Alzheimer's or Parkinson's disease, which are much longer programs as well.
So the position is really strong, and sounds like you guys are kind of getting ready to really mobilize and commercialize for the ALS, depending on the FDA meeting in quarter 2, correct?
Now, the FDA meeting in quarter 2 is about us starting the clinical trial, but the
Okay.
commercialization will be when the study is done, we get a chance to look at the data, we have to go back to the regulatory bodies,
So
discuss.
that's why the 6 months
Yeah,
extension.
correct. And then you got the 6-month extension. So there's
Correct.
a bunch of stage gates before one can get to the market. But more importantly, Dr. Reddy's, our commercial partner, is going to take on the efforts of commercializing it. So they will be responsible for all the things that come with commercialization, including the sales force and so on. So.
Well, that's amazing. So my thing is, so with that being said, I also see like you guys have, you know, I saw the article that came out. You guys also put it out on your website about the Coya 303 and with the combination of the Coya 301 with the GLP Raptor. Is that correct? Receptor?
Correct. Yeah.
Can you explain that? What's going on with that?
Yeah, so if you look at our strategy at Coya, we fundamentally believe that addressing Treg is central to it. So what we do, our Coya 301 is our proprietary low-dose interleukin-2, which on its own increases Treg function and Treg numbers. And then what we have found is adding and combining it with the right modality can really synergize things. That's what we did with Coya 302, which is a combination of CTLA4. Coya 303 is a combination now with GLP-1 agonists. GLP-1s, as I think mentioned briefly before, there's now enough evidence pointing to the fact that GLP-1s help with slowing down the progression of dementia in early Alzheimer's, but also stopping the onset of dementia. In a big retrospective study that was published yesterday in Nature, if I'm right, approximately 1 million people were looked at from the VA health system, essentially. Patients were on either GLP-1 or on other diabetes drugs. These are patients who already had type 2 diabetes. What they found is that patients who were taking GLP-1s had lower onset of dementia. There was a similar study published in the Lancet, again, two big reputable journals, I believe, run by the Karolinska Institute. That also, there's smaller numbers of patients, but again, I'm talking 10 plus thousand patients. Same thing, same trend was seen. And there are companies such as Novo Nordisk that are pursuing their GLP-1 in a randomized double-blind controlled trial in Alzheimer's disease. So what we are doing is saying, look, we have Coya 301 that standalone does work in Alzheimer's disease, and the mechanism is different. GLP-1s are likely to have positive effects as well, it seems, on dementia and Alzheimer's. And the two together can really be additive or synergistic. And that's the data we'll be publishing in about, hopefully in a few months in a journal. It's preclinical data that will demonstrate that combining our Coya 301 with a GLP-1, we get 1 + 1 is better than 2, essentially. And so that's the approach we're following. And that's pretty exciting because I think that's going to open a lot of opportunities for us to go after some of these tough diseases, but also hopefully a lot of opportunities for us to maybe partner with the right company moving forward on that.
You know, when I think about GLP-1 and I think about the stuff that it's done so far with the weight loss, it got its biggest recognition for the weight loss, that happened in Ozempic, how big that become and all the stuff that it can do and all the stuff that it looks like you guys were able to accomplish with it. Um with this, what is with that being said, with investors out there, new investors, retail investors out there, what is something they don't know about Coya that they think they should know?
One, I think our track record of delivering. A lot of uh, people may not have noticed our story so far. Two, our scientific approach. Our scientific approach is solid. It's de-risked because we are going after targets that have been validated for other diseases. IL-2s, CTLA-4s, these have been around in other diseases for a while. So we are de-risked it in the sense that it's unlikely that we're going to see some surprising safety findings and so on that hasn't already been seen and characterized. And we're studying them at lower doses, but we're pursuing novel indications with them. So we have the right mix of intellectual property protection, but de-risked in the sense that we're not chasing a completely esoteric mechanism where nobody knows what it may or may not do. And thirdly, we have aligned, and we align very closely with the regulatory authorities, such as FDA, make sure that we're doing the right things. That also further de-risks our programs as we move forward. And third is, we have a track record of doing business development deals. We'll continue to prioritize that. That's one of our strategic pillars. So there's always potential for Coya to get additional non-dilutive money, which is always good for the company and good for all our stakeholders as well. So I think that's what's exciting about Coya is if you look at us, Uh, our science supports the data, supports the science. The data supports us moving forward in bigger trials and increases the probability of positive outcomes there. And the diseases we are pursuing have a high unmet need. So I think that's what, if I was an outsider looking at Coya, that's what would excite me about Coya. And we have a plan, and we have been executing well so far.
So the one thing I want to ask, I like what I'm hearing. I like what I'm hearing. Also, with the research I've done, I already know got you guys about your track record. Your track record is pretty amazing. You guys are really good at executing. Very few biotech companies are very good at executing and doing things in a certain manner. And you guys might have a formula that definitely might revolutionize Alzheimer's and ALS. Um, my thing is, what does the next 12 to 18 months look like for you guys?
Yeah, it's an exciting 12 to 18 months, Kenny. Immediately, right, in the short term, we have, like I said, we'll have publications on our Coya 303, the combination with GLP-1 that will demonstrate synergy. Uh, we plan to initiate another preclinical study with the combination of our Coya 303 in a neurodegenerative model that we have not yet disclosed, but that's going to initiate as well. We will have additional data, cytokine level data on Alzheimer's disease from our investigator-initiated trial. I think that data uh, will be important because it'll show, further validate our mechanism and also show the inverse relationship that low-dose interleukin-2 has. As in, you really have to keep the interleukin dose low for the Tregs to be functional and not become dysfunctional. We'll have additional Alzheimer's biomarker single cell proteomics type data as well in multiple tranches. So all this we're looking at in the first half alone. And then we will initiate
The first
our
half of 2025?
of 2025. So everything I told you
Wow.
we should have out in the first half. And then in the second half, we should be getting back to the FDA with basically our IND for the phase 2B ALS clinical trial. And then soon after we get the green light from the FDA, we will begin that trial next year as well. And that's going to be a pretty important trial because the readout, the top line from that uh, will be very impactful. Of course, we feel pretty confident of the outcomes, but we'll have to do the study and wait for it. And then we will, in the same time, sometime in the second half, or we should have top-line data from the ongoing investigator-initiated trial in frontotemporal dementia. Small number of patients, a very small number of patients, but it should give us an idea of, one, is the drug working in that patient population? Two, what can we learn from the biomarkers, et cetera, that we can then use to design the bigger trial, which we have designed already, but tweak it, get the regulatory blessing on that one as well, and hopefully get that trial started in the next in that 18-month time frame that you're talking about. So by early 2026 or even time frame. And then in 2026, we will start getting into that time frame where we will have hopefully the top line data from the ALS study. And not to mention, by then, I'm sure we'll be advancing a few other things. By then, I'm hoping that we would also have struck a few other partnerships of value. So yeah, our 18 months is going to be fun. It's going to be
It's going to be exciting
positive.
18 months. Definitely with kind of the almost guaranteed to have money already to push you all the way to commercialization. I mean, that safety run really helps make things excel quicker. Am I right for saying that?
Yeah, you're right. I mean, our money will take us through the second half of 2026, not counting any additional non-dilutive money that we may receive in the time period. So that could allow us, if we get that, to extend the runway as well. But yeah, so I feel pretty good about where we are as a company. Um, and the best we can do as a biotech company is to keep advancing the science, keep doing the right things. We don't control the outcome, but we do control what we can do. So our philosophy at Koya is we control what we can control, and we do that well. I mean, as one of the famous sayings goes, I can't control the waves, but I can learn to surf, and that's something we do at Koya well. We can't control the waves, but we can learn to surf, and we do, and we navigate well, and we adapt, we learn, we modify, we've been pretty nimble. So.
Man, I'm gonna end it on that note, man. Everybody, thank you for listening to Marathon Money. I really appreciate the CEO of Koya coming out, man. We learned tons of stuff. They have an exciting 12 to 18 months that's going to be happening. They really have a great runway. They have the room, they have the cash, and it seems like they're making the right partnerships. And don't be surprised if you see them at one of the big companies at the top of the mountain. Thank you so much for your time.